Let's move on to main topic number 4. And our fourth main topic today gets submitted to us by one of our Patreon supporters, Matthew Gray. And Matthew Gray writes, "Hi, John. Greetings from London, England." Well, greetings, Matthew. Big fan since the AMC days. My question is, do you think fans who campaign to see the Snyder Cut will say they loved it regardless of how good or bad it actually is? I can see the initial reaction being similar to the Phantom Menace. It's interesting that you brought up the Phantom Menace. I'll talk about that in a second. When it came out, thanks and keep bringing the filthiest filth. All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And this was actually, I'm going to let you guys know, this question from Matthew was actually lifted from the Open Mic podcast we did yesterday, because I thought it was such an interesting topic to bring out. And I see more and more people talking about this online, so I thought I'd want to address it here on the show. Here's the thing. I can only assume that Matthew saw the same online debate that was going on about this, because I came across the same topic in one of the boards a couple days ago, so I can only assume Matthew saw the same one, and that's why he wrote it in. So the question is, do we think that people who are advocating strongly for a Snyder Cut over the last few years, do we think that when the Snyder Cut comes out, which remember, Man of Steel, masterpiece of a movie, by the way, Man of Steel was hated by a whole ton of people. Half the critics, half the audience hated it. Batman vs. Superman came out. Half the critics, half the audiences hated it. I like them both. I love Man of Steel, but it still is what it is. What do we think their reaction is going to be? Are they going to say, these people who advocated for a Snyder Cut, when it comes out, are these people going to say it's the most awesome thing ever and it's great, even if it's a pile of crap? I've been seeing that question being asked a lot. Here's the thing about that, though. It really is a loaded question, and it's fixed. The question, it's a fixed question. What do you mean by that? Follow me here. Do I think that some people who advocated strongly for a Snyder Cut version of Justice League over the past couple of years are going to, by default, just say that it's awesome when it comes out? Yes. But everybody does it. Follow me here. The reason I say this question is fixed is because let's ask another theoretical question, okay? Let's ask another theoretical question. Theoretical question is, do you think people who have dyed their hair blue, and there are a lot of, I see a lot of people with blue dyed hair, actually. I mean, it's actually more, people color their hair more and more these days. So a lot of people out there color their hair different colors, whole bunch of them blue. So if you were to ask the question, do you think if somebody who had blue colored hair came across a bus stop and nobody was there, and there was just a bag sitting there with $1 million, and nobody was around, and no one would catch them, do you think somebody with blue dyed hair would pick up that bag and take it? The answer to the question is yes. However, it's not just people with blue dyed hair who would do that. People with brown hair would do that. People with blonde hair would do that. Redheads would do that. People with black as midnight hair would do that. Not everybody, but yeah, I think somebody with blue colored hair would probably pick up that bag and run with it. But I also think anybody would. I mean, not everybody, but I think anybody from any group of people. I think a brown haired person has just as much likelihood to reach over and say, hey, there's a bag with $1 million here at this bus stop and nobody's around. Yoink, and go. I think somebody with blonde hair has equally as much of a chance to do that, right? The question is fixed. And so in asking, would people who advocated hard for the Snyder Cut movie, even if the movie ends up being bad, and that's a subjective opinion in and of itself, but for whatever sake, for argument's sake, let's say it's bad. I don't believe it's going to be bad, but let's say it is. Are those people who advocate for the Snyder Cut, are a bunch of them just going to say it's awesome anyway? Yes. But the question is fixed because everybody does that. Everybody does that. You've done that. Maybe not with Snyder Cut, but maybe it's with something else. But you've done it. And I've done it. And this is why it was interesting that you brought up the Phantom Menace. It's interesting that you brought up the Phantom Menace in this is because for those of you guys who don't know, I mean, everybody knows I hate the prequels. I don't like the prequels. If other people love them, that's awesome. But I think the prequels are terrible. But when the first Star Wars movie was coming out, when that first prequel was coming out, The Phantom Menace, we never thought we were going to get another Star Wars movie again. And here comes The Phantom Menace. And oh my God, it's got Liam Neeson in it. And to a kid like me, whose Star Wars is basically life, Star Wars is life to me. And it certainly was when I was younger as well. So when that movie was coming out, I was heavily invested in it. And so I went to go see it for the first time, and I'm like, that was the greatest thing ever. I didn't realize I was just basically talked myself into liking it. And then the second time I went to go see it, I'm like, okay, it wasn't the greatest thing ever, but it was so great. And then the third time I saw it, okay, maybe it wasn't all that great, but it was really good. I mean, it was really good. And then the fourth time I saw it, I was like, well, it's still good, right? And then like the fifth time, this isn't so good. And then 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th time, I'm like, oh no, this is just horrible. This is so bad. This is so bad. But I was heavily invested in it emotionally, even before the damn thing came out. And that's an example of me when that's happened to me. And I guarantee you almost everybody has that same experience. So that's why I say it's a fixed question. It's an unfair question. Do we think there are some people who advocated for a Snyder Cut movie who are heavily invested in it, that even if it turns out to be bad and just as divisive as the other ones and whatever, do we think they're still going to say it's awesome? That's unfair. Because if you ask the question, does a person who is heavily invested in any property have a possibility of just saying it was awesome even if it really wasn't? The answer to that is yes. It's true of anything, of any property, of any movie fan or whatever. So yeah, I do think there are going to be some Snyder Cut advocates who are going to say it's great even if it wasn't. Sure. But I only believe that because that's true of everybody, of every property, right? I think it's true of everybody, of every property. So I've been seeing a lot of people arguing about this, is that no, they won't, or yes, they were. When really the truth is, yes, some of them will, but only because everybody does it. It's not just them. It's not just people with blue dyed hair. It's everybody. And so, yeah, I think they will, only because I think that's true of everything and everybody. And I don't think it makes it any more special or nefarious just because it's the Snyder Cut. Now, look, you guys know how I feel about this, right? Bottom line for me is, other than Sucker Punch, I've liked every movie that Zack Snyder's ever made, particularly Man of Steel, which is a masterpiece. So since I liked his DC offering so far, I mean, Man of Steel, obviously, Batman versus Superman, I'm expecting that I'm going to like this next one. I'm also expecting that people who didn't like his other DC offerings probably aren't going to like this new thing either. They've already had their taste and sample of what Zack Snyder's DC flavor is, and they don't like it. Fair enough. There's no reason to expect that they're going to change their minds. But there's no reason to expect I'm going to change my mind either. I like his other stuff. I'm expecting I'm going to like this. So let's see. Let's see how it turns out. Question is, guys, how do you feel about that? Do you think my analogy applies? Maybe you think it doesn't. Do you think you have a hard line answer for that one way or the other? I think it's more middle of the road. What do you guys think? Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys.